Okay, so you have seen yourself on video running and noticed that your knees are not that stable, swinging maybe sideways a lot. Or you may have a sore knee and think that your knees are not strong enough for running. And that's when you think of that phrase you heard so many times, that you need to strengthen the muscles around the knees. You have probably heard that phrase before. Have you also tried to strengthen the muscles around the knees? Did it go well? Well, I certainly hope so. Very often I meet runners who have either figured out for themselves that they should strengthen the muscles around their knees, or maybe a physiotherapist have told them to do so. Strength training is excellent for runners, but I still have a problem with that instruction. Because what exactly do you mean by the muscles around the knees? Which muscles do you mean? Let's look at a knee. This is a knee, and this is the area around the knee. Okay, so there are muscles here above the knees, your thigh muscles, the quads, and they're usually very easy to find and to find exercise for. But what about below the knee? Do you see any muscles there? No, there were no muscles there. And on the side? And maybe on this side? No, not so much muscles there either. Well, I know there are muscles here coming up from above and going in the thighs, down and attached down here. But it hardly helps to say the muscles around the knee if you want someone to strengthen the inner thighs, the adductors, right? I would even say that the hamstrings are more important for how the knee moves laterally than your quads. But it is rarely the hamstrings that people think about when they think about muscles around the knees. Same thing with the muscles on the inside of the thigh, the adductors. They are also very important for stabilizing the body and the knees when you land in running. But as I said, it's hardly the adductors that runners mean when they say that they should strengthen the muscles around the knees. We can also look at what causes instability in the knee. There can be, of course, a wide range of causes, but we can look at some of them. And if we now imagine that this is your finger, my finger here, and this is your lower leg. So your knee is the joint between my fingers here. And we can, of course, add a piece of tape or a band-aid around the joint to make it more stable, which is kind of in the line with strengthening the muscles around the knees. Or we can make sure that you're strong and stable in the hip up here or at the foot down here to reduce the wobbling in the knees. So maybe that's where you should focus your strength and stability training, the hip and the ankle and foot. And also, my 3D cameras show that it is extremely common for recreational runners to have large lateral forces going sideways in the knees and hips that both cost energy and potentially lead to overload and injury. But it is also very common that the lateral forces in the knees and the hips are greatly reduced when you find a more relaxed and bigger movement in the shoulder joints. Many recreational runners think that they are moving their arms when they are actually just mostly rotating the body, which creates increased lateral forces also in the knees. They think they are doing like this, but they're actually doing this. Another cause for the very high lateral forces in the knees and hips is if you put your feet a little too wide. A slightly too wide foot placement can be due to several reasons. For example, that having not that three-dimensional, slightly rotating movement of the pelvis, but trying to keep the hip very, very still when running, and the foot placement gets very wide instead of turning it in. The hip goes in and the foot placement becomes more narrow. It can also be caused by the following instruction: the hands must move in the direction of travel, straight forward and backwards. Since it is common for feet to follow the hands, there is a risk that you also put your feet wider when you also hold your hands relatively wide. This does not happen for everyone, but it's not that uncommon either. And there are few things that create so much wobbling and lateral forces in the knees as putting your feet a little bit too wide. And then it doesn't matter if you have done a lot of strength training for all the muscles that you consider to be part of the muscles around the knees to stabilize them. Reducing lateral forces in the knees through changes in shoulder movement and foot placement is a so much better idea than solving it with strength training. Why put a helmet on to protect your head when you're running at full speed head first into a wall, when it's so much easier to protect your head by, well, not running into the wall? But of course, strength training is never bad. So if you do some extra strength training for all the muscles that you find, regardless of whether they are around the knee or where you can find them elsewhere in the body, that's great. But this is not a video where I try to say that strength training your muscles around the knees is bad. This is a video about how the instruction strengthen the muscles around the knee is very strange, and I don't think it does much good unless you have a very clear instruction on exactly what you need to do to become a faster, a stronger and less injury-prone runner. There is a Swedish saying that goes, "Det dunkelt sagda är det dunkelt tänkta," which roughly translates as "the vaguely said is the vaguely thought." Which means that if your thoughts are a bit fuzzy and unclear, what you say will also be fuzzy and unclear. And the sentence, "strengthen the muscles around the knee," is just such a sentence that is usually shown that the person saying it has a fuzzy and an unclear understanding of what the problem really is and how to solve it. Not always, but often. Moreover, there are probably as many interpretations on what the instruction means as there are people who have heard it. So today's take-home message is, well, it's actually mostly a video about something that annoys me. But also, don't be fuzzy and unclear when giving instructions, and don't let anyone else give you an unclear instruction either. Learn to understand how it works and it will be easier to find a solution. And make sure to get that movement in the shoulder joint and the movement in the hip so that your feet are at a suitable distance from each other when you run. And that's it for today. I truly hope you liked that video, and if you did, please click the like button and maybe also the subscribe button. And feel free to check out all the other content I have here on my channel. And maybe you are also interested in my online course. You'll find it at fredrikzillen.com.